Everyone, I'm delighted to welcome you to the talk tonight, which is chaired by Sandy Wood, the curator of the RSA Collections Archive and Library. Our speaker this evening is Alice Strang, who's going to talk to you about First Women of the Royal Scottish Academy, a very appropriate topic, being just in advance of International Women's Day on the 8th of March. Alice, I am sure, is known to many of you by some of the fascinating exhibitions that she's curated in her role as Senior Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art at the National Galleries of Scotland. Highlights of Alice's career to date include the Scottish Colourist series of exhibitions of the work of F.C.B. Cadell, J.D. Ferguson, and G.L. Hunter. She is a BBC Expert Woman and a Saltire Society Outstanding Woman of Scotland for her leadership of the 2015 Modern Scottish Women, Painters and Sculptors 1885 to 1965 project, including the wonderful exhibition and the publication. During furlough leave last year, she researched and wrote the essay on which this evening's talk is based, and can be read on the RSA's website and in an abridged form on the Art UK website. More recently, according to the newspapers, complete with photographs, she's been moonlighting as a paper girl, doing newspaper deliveries in her local area. Could this be a new career direction, I wonder? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted. I give you Alice Strang. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Evening, everyone. In 1885, Sir William Fettes Douglas, 6th President of the Royal Scottish Academy of Painting, Sculpture and Architecture, which I will call by the abbreviation the RSA, infamously declared that the work of a woman artist was like a man's, only weaker and poorer. It is not surprising, therefore, that the history of women at the RSA is stark, but it is improving. The Scottish Academy was founded in Edinburgh in 1826 as a practitioner-led organisation with 5 objectives: to hold an annual exhibition, to provide free instruction to fine arts students, to establish a fine arts library, to provide financial support to artists in need, and to admit honorary members eminent in their fields. Between 1855 and 1910, the Academy shared the building on the Mound, now known as the Scottish National Gallery, equally with the gallery. In 1911, it moved into the adjacent Royal Institution building, which you can see being constructed in this slide, now known as the Royal Scottish Academy building, where many of its activities are still based. On receipt of a royal charter from Queen Victoria in 1838, it became known as the Royal Scottish Academy. The mission of the RSA is now to support and promote the creation, understanding, and enjoyment of the visual arts in Scotland. On its founding, the Academy consisted of 11 academicians, given the rank of RSA or full members, and 7 associate academicians with the rank of ARSA, all of whom were men. In 1827, the category of honorary academician, notified by the initials HRSA, was introduced for architects and artists of international significance, enlightened practitioners in other art forms, and those whose support of the arts is at the highest level. 2 years later, in 1829, Christina Robertson became the first female member of the RSA when she was one of 11 artists and 1 architect to be elected to that rank. Robertson, whose maiden name was Saunders, was born in Kinghorn in Fife. Believed to have been trained by her uncle, George Sanders, by 1829 she had established a reputation in London as a portrait and miniature painter, and had begun exhibiting at the Royal Academy of Arts, known as the RA, in the English capital. She was made an HRSA rather than RSA because she lived too far away to fulfill the requirements of those of the latter rank to contribute to the running of the Academy in Edinburgh. Robertson exhibited at the RSA 6 times between 1829 and 1845 and achieved international success, including commissions for the Russian royal family and maintaining a studio in St. Petersburg. In 1841, she was elected an honorary member of the Imperial Academy of Arts in the city, where she died in 1854. Until the 2005 revision of its royal charter, known as the Supplementary Charter, abolished the category, the most common route to joining the RSA was to be elected an associate member, of whom some later attained full RSA status. Prospective members had to be proposed and seconded by existing academicians and associates. The Academy's nominations books originally explained the eligibility criteria thus. Persons nominated must be artists by profession in the art of painting, sculpture, architect, or engraving, of high reputation in their several professions, and resident and settled in Scotland at the date of their respective elections. They must be persons of good moral character, not under 20 years of age, and not apprentices. The first woman to be elected an associate of the RSA was the painter Josephine Haswell Miller in 1938. In common with most nominees, she was not successful on her first attempt, having been proposed 2 years earlier by Alec Riddle Sturrock and Ernest Stephen Lumsden. Her qualifications for nomination were stated as exhibits RSA, Glasgow Institute, etc., etc., purchased by Modern Arts, referring to the Royal Glasgow Institute of the Fine Arts and the Scottish Modern Arts Association, a collecting society active between 1906 and 1964, whose collection is now with the City Art Centre in Edinburgh. Haswell Miller, née Cameron, was born in Glasgow and studied at Glasgow School of Art, where she taught etching and printmaking between 1924 and 1932. In 1916, she married the artist Archibald Elliott Haswell Miller, with whom she had a joint exhibition in 1923. They moved to Edinburgh in 1930, following her husband's appointment as keeper of the Scottish National Portrait Gallery. Haswell Miller contributed regularly to group exhibitions in Edinburgh, Glasgow, and London, was elected to the Society of Scottish Artists in 1924, and became a governor of Edinburgh College of Art in 1941. She exhibited at the RSA 40 times between 1920 and 1975. On her husband's retirement in 1952, the couple moved to Dorset. Her RSA pension was removed 3 years later, as she was no longer domiciled in Scotland, a fact which would have prevented her from becoming a full academician. Between 1826 and 2005, promotion from ARSA to RSA was possible on successful election following the resignation or death of an academician in the same disciplinary category, meaning in painting, printmaking from 1989, and sculpture as an artist or as an architect. In 1936, the sculptor Phyllis Mary Bone was nominated for associateship by Benno Schatz and Alec Riddle Sturrock, with the qualifications exhibitor, RSA, RA, Glasgow Royal Fine Art Institute, etc., etc. She became an ARSA 3 years later, and so in 1944 became the first female elected a full academician, filling the space created by the death of James Pittenry McGillivray in 1938. Bone was born in Hornby, Lancashire, and grew up in Edinburgh. She studied at Edinburgh College of Art and under the animalier Edouard Navelier in Paris. She established her reputation with her contribution to the Scottish National War Memorial, within the Edinburgh Castle complex during the period 1923 to 1927. She was responsible for modelling all but one of the animals amongst other sculptural work. Prestigious commissions followed, including for the University of Edinburgh and the Scottish Office, which she realised in parallel with the creation of smaller sculptures. A long, prolific and successful career saw her present this bronze, Shere Khan the Tiger of 1930, to the Academy's Diploma collection. This is a requirement of being elected to the rank of RSA. She showed work in the Academy's annual exhibition 55 times between 1915 and 1972. Following her death later that year, a memorial display was mounted as part of the 1973 exhibition. The first female painter to be elected to the rank of RSA was Anne Redpath in 1952, following the deaths of William Somerville Shanks and John Guthrie Spence Smith the year before. She was nominated for associateship in 1941, 1942, and 1946 before being successful in 1947, with James Cowie, Josephine Haswell Miller, Ernest Stephen Lumsden, James Maxwell, Charles Oppenheimer, and Alec Riddle Sturrock as her proposers and seconders. Her qualifications for nomination began with exhibitor at contemporary exhibitions, progressed to she has exhibited excellent work for many years and exhibits in contemporary exhibitions, and excellent work for many years past, before escalating to exhibits at all contemporary shows. Haswell Miller's seconding of Sturrock's proposal of Redpath's nomination in 1941 was the first time a woman was in a position to do such a thing. Redpath was born in Galashiels and studied concurrently at Edinburgh College of Art and Murray House College of Education. In 1920, she married the architect James Beattie Michie, and they moved to France, where they lived for 14 years. Redpath returned to Scotland in 1934 with their children and settled in Edinburgh 5 years later. Her first solo exhibition was held in 1947. Her first work to enter a public collection was acquired by Glasgow Art Gallery and Museum in 1949, and in 1960, she became the first Scottish woman to be elected an associate of the RA. During a prestigious career, she donated this painting, the Chapel of Saint-Jean-Tréboul of around 1956, as her RSA diploma work. She exhibited at the Academy 30 times between 1919 and 1964. She too received a memorial display in the annual exhibition following her death in 1965. Beth Fisher was the first female to be elected to the category of printmaker in 1989, the year in which it was introduced, thereby attaining the rank of associate. This accolade was bestowed on Willie Roger at the same time. Fisher, née Lovejoy, was born in Portland, Maine. She studied at the University of Wisconsin and at the Ruskin School of Art, University of Oxford. In 1971, she moved to Scotland, where she helped to establish Glasgow Print Studio in 1972. She worked at Peacock Visual Arts in Aberdeen for 16 years from 1976. She taught at Glasgow School of Art, Duncan of Dordenston College of Art and Design in Dundee, and Gray's School of Art in Aberdeen, before retiring from teaching in 2004. Fisher is a figurative artist who explores female identity from a feminist standpoint, often through depictions of herself and her family. She interprets the body in relation to individuality and unflinchingly investigates domestic and personal concerns. She considers drawing to be fundamental to her practice and openly acknowledges her appropriation from art history, including religious composition and iconography. Fisher has exhibited at the RSA 22 times between 1990 and 2020, and her touring exhibition, Griset Legacy, began at the RSA in 2010. Fisher and Elspeth Lamb, who was elected an associate in the printmaker category in 1990, were both made full academicians in 2005, along with their fellow living ARSAs, when the associate rank was abolished. At the same time, the individual categories of painting, printmaking, and sculpture were amalgamated to that of artist, in recognition of the emergence of new disciplines and the cross-disciplinary interests of a growing number of practitioners. This simplified the membership categories of the Academy to art and architecture, which themselves sometimes overlap, whilst the rank of RSA elect was re-emphasised. This signifies that the member is yet to present a diploma work to the Academy's collection, at which point their rank is formalised to RSA. The one out, one in rule was abolished in 2005 as well, allowing membership to grow more quickly than was possible before. The first female to be elected to the architect category of Academy membership was Catherine Finlay as RSA elect in 2007. She was born in Forfar and trained at the Architectural Association School of Architecture in London. On graduating in 1979, Finlay moved to Tokyo to join the office of Arata Isozaki. In 1986, she formed the Yoshida Finlay partnership with her husband, Isaku Finlay. She was the first ever female and first foreigner since the Meiji period of the late 19th century to teach architecture at Tokyo University. She later became Professor of Architecture and Environment at the University of Dundee. Distinguished projects include Soft and Hairy House of 1994, Grafton New Hall of 2002, and the Arcella Mittel Orbit with Anish Kapoor and Cecil Balmond for the London 2012 Olympic Park. Finlay was invited to contribute to the RSA's summer exhibition of 2005, 2 years before her election to the Academy. She was a selector of the 2012 RSA New Contemporaries exhibition, which highlights emerging artists and architects in Scotland. Her death in 2014 was marked with a memorial display in the following year's annual exhibition. When the sculptor Marion Smith was appointed secretary in 2012, she became the first female senior office bearer of the RSA. Born in St Andrews, Smith studied at Grey School of Art and at Art EZ, University of the Arts in Arnhem. Working on a scale from the miniature to the monumental, she explores the possibilities of a broad variety of materials and uses traditional skills in innovative ways. Her practice encompasses work made for a gallery context, as well as site-specific commissions, which embody a considered understanding of the environment. Her first solo exhibition was held at Crawford Arts Centre, St Andrews, in 1997. As Smith has explained, my work at the Scottish Sculpture Workshop, Glasgow Sculpture Studios, and as a fine art technician at the Glasgow School of Art is significant to me. I use a lot of different materials and techniques and now work with the support of specialists, significantly Fife Glenrock in Old Meldrum, a granite company, and Powder Hall Bronze in Edinburgh. When I say support, collaboration, sharing of knowledge and trust are key. Recently, I have worked in glass with Northlands Creative in Caithness. Amongst Smith's recent commissions are those for Trails and Tales, East Dunbartonshire in 2018, and for Inchdarney Distillery, Glenrothes in 2019. She began exhibiting in the RSA annual exhibitions in 1993, became an ARSA in 1998, and an RSA in 2005. From its foundation, the RSA has been led by a standing committee of President, Secretary and Treasurer, and by a council of which the standing committee office bearers are members. Between 2006 and 2020, the Academy's operational structure has also come to include general purposes, exhibitions and events, plus friends and development committees. Major decisions are made collectively at the Assembly of Academicians, which is held quarterly. Amongst the Secretary's duties are responsibility for the staff of the Academy, led by its director, and writing the introduction to the annual exhibition catalogue. Smith served as Secretary until 2018. Oh. There we go. On her election in 2018, Joyce W Cairns became the first female and 22nd president of the RSA. Having contributed to the annual exhibition regularly since 1971, Cairns was elected an ARSA in 1985, when only 4 women were full academicians, namely Mary Armour, Elizabeth Blackadder, Ellen Malcolm, and Frances Walker. In addition, Cairns joined 4 female ARSAs, namely Barbara Balmer, Elizabeth Dempster, Frances Pelly, and Barbara Ray. Cairns became an RSA in 1998, when admission to that rank was limited to 36 members. Cairns was born in Edinburgh. She studied at Gray's School of Art, Hospital Field College of Art Arbroath, the Royal College of Art in London, and Goldsmiths, University of London. She taught at Gray's for 28 years before taking early retirement in 2004 in order to concentrate on her own practice. She has explained that her work is mainly autobiographical, based on past memories intertwined with present experiences, often woven around the backcloth of the once fishing village of Footdee at the mouth of Aberdeen Harbour, where I lived for 35 years. A significant body of work created as memorials under the umbrella title War Tourist culminated in a celebrated solo exhibition at Aberdeen Art Gallery in 2006. This painting, Bonjour Field Marshal, comes from this series. Cairns has been a prolific exhibitor since 1970, and the most recent solo exhibition was The Magic Gate and Other Stories at Kilmorack Gallery, Bewley, in 2018. Amongst the RSA's sister academies, the Royal West of England Academy, founded in Bristol in 1844, was the first to elect a female president when Janet Stanton Wills assumed the role in 1911. All 4 academies currently have female presidents, the other 3 their first, namely Cairns in Edinburgh, plus Abigail O'Brien at the Royal Hibernian Academy, founded in Dublin in 1823, who was elected in 2018, 1 month before Cairns, Rebecca Salter at the Royal Academy of Arts, founded in London in 1768, who was elected in 2019, and Fiona Robinson at the Royal West of Academy, Edinburgh, elected in 2019. Addressing the history of women at the RSA, Cairns point out that it and her above quoted predecessor, Sir William Fettes Douglas, were of their time in their attitudes to gender. She acknowledges the Academy's past, whilst pointing out the rapid increase in the number of female members in the 21st century. This is especially true since the Supplementary Charter was implemented in 2005, the year in which an unprecedented 11 women were attained the rank of RSA. Cairns summed up her philosophy for the Academy, explaining, "The opinions of late 19th and early 20th century academicians on gender have no place in today's society, and to keep apologising for these views gives them a credence they do not deserve. It should go without saying that whether judging awards or electing new RSA members, all architects and artists are judged only on the quality of their work, regardless of age, gender, or ethnicity. As an organisation, we continue to look forward rather than backwards in our plans for continual betterment. Cairns has a threefold vision for the RSA: to be more inclusive amongst its membership, to expand its education programme, and to prepare for its 200th anniversary celebrations in 2026. The latter will provide an opportunity to appraise all aspects in the history of the RSA, including that regarding women, as well as to look to the future of Scotland's longest running artist-led institution. Finally, here is a list of the key dates and facts which I have discussed. As Joyce mentioned, this information and the essay on which this talk is based is available on the RSA website. There is also an excellent interview of Joyce Cairns by Tom Normand on the Art UK website. It is great to have had the opportunity to celebrate these 8 pioneering women, not least Joyce, who is with us this evening. Thank you.
Chalice, that was fascinating. It was great to hear more about the institution that I've been spending my time dedicated to for the last, I think, 17 years now, and finding out about some of the first women who've really paved the way for the many who are part of the Academy now and help, you know, operate everything we do. I think Sheena might be putting us back into gallery view at some point soon, so we can have a bit of a chat about, you know, what you've been talking about, and also to put any questions that have come from the audience to yourself and to Joyce, and I'm available to answer anything as well. I think there's just one that's come in so far, but I thought I'd maybe start off, I guess, by asking you, because of, you know, the research you've been doing and the interest that it's had for me, and especially over the period of furlough that you've been on and focusing on it. I wondered what most surprised you or interested you in that research that you've been doing into the RSA and women artists and architects.
Yeah, I think my interest in the subject really came to the fore when we were doing the Modern Scottish Women Painters and Sculptures project, and I feel that this is a wonderful, rich subject, and there's lots more for us to find out and to talk about. And then when I was on furlough leave, I remember emailing you and saying, look, you know, is it possible for me to do some research in this field in terms of the history of the RSA? And the amazing thing is, because you have been able to digitize so much of your archival material, you were able to basically email me immediately the most amazing evidence of the nomination books and so on. So it really gave me something to do during that first lockdown. And I think what I really enjoyed doing, I felt that I had been given this wonderful opportunity to establish the facts that I've just run through, the who's and the when's and the why's. And it's lovely that the RSA has sort of embraced this research and published it and had me along tonight to talk about it. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I mean, I think it was great to hear that it was something that you were interested in writing about. I think you know, I've got children in the background having to come out the bath or go into the bath or whatever. Constant distractions when you're on Zoom. It doesn't matter what time of the day you're operating at. But yeah, I think it's great to be able to have different people, I think, looking in from the outside and having that sort of those sort of strands of research to look at. And I think one of the positive things that have come out of this kind of horrible situation that we've been in over a year now has been how we've managed to get more research out over the ether digitally than we had before. And so, you know, that's been a great thing, and something that we're hoping to take forward, I think.
Absolutely. Who could have imagined this time last year that we would be able to do a talk like this with people joining in from their own homes? It's great, you know. Joyce, as we have you here, I wondered if you might tell us a little bit about your experience of of joining the Academy and going through the ranks, and then of course reaching the culmination of being the first female president.
Look, right. How long have you got? This has been a 35-year journey. I was elected RSA in, as you said, in 1985, nominated, I think, by William Littlejohn and Frances Walker. I didn't get, I think the year before I'd been nominated, but obviously failed to get in the first time. But that year I had a major exhibition of large works shown in the 369 Gallery in Edinburgh, which went to the Third Eye Centre in Glasgow, and then up to Peacock Art Space in Aberdeen. And I think this probably helped my case at the time. When I was elected, there were, as you said, I think only 8 other female numbers. I realised this at my first member's varnishing day lunch, when all I could see around me was a sea of very jovial male faces. After I'd done my inaugural speech, they threw me flowers from the vases on the tables. Obviously, electing a woman was a novel experience. Mind you, I had lots of fun. I don't remember ever coming out of a varnishing day lunch sober until I became president and didn't dare have a drink. There was a definite hierarchy. As a newly elected member in those days, you collected voting slips at the assembly, attracting a few ribald remarks as you went on your way around the benches. I remember being elected along with Ian Howard onto our first hanging team for the annual exhibition. David Meehey and Bill Littlejohn were the senior men, and we were there to do their bidding, lifting moving work and being sent to find paintings of a certain colour and size to use as caps. They very kindly gave Ian and I one wall to arrange, which of course they proceeded to unarrange. weren't good enough. But you did learn an awful lot, you know, being in that junior role and seeing how they went about hanging in those galleries. It was, a tremendous learning curve for all of us. I was elected a full RSA in 1998. At that time, only 36 members could hold the rank, and the vacancy only occurred when someone died. I've no idea who died to allow me in. You might know, Alice, but I don't. I was really surprised to be elevated in front of several men who had been elected to the RSA well before me. So I think that was progress. What difference did it make as a full RSA? Well, I became the convener of the annual exhibition, which unfortunately was held in Edinburgh City Arts Centre when the Mound building was closed for refurbishment. And this was a difficult job with someone with limited experience. But I think all the men thought, oh, I'm not doing that. We'll give her the job, new member, she can get on with it. Anyway, I had a very good team and we had lots of laughs. I could now serve in council and be allowed to dress up in the full Academy regalia. Some of the original robes had seen better days, reeked of sweat of many academicians past, and had gravy stains down the bodice. I was the only woman amongst 13 men on council, in my first council, which was quite intimidating. But in those days, we had sumptuous lunches in what was now the members' lobby, which is a bit between the Academicians' Gallery and the Octagon Galleries. And we had aperitifs, wine, a digestive, and afterwards we rolled into the meeting. Nowadays, you're lucky to get a sandwich and a pork pie and a glass of apple juice. But I have improved the fodder a little bit, as I'm sure council can tell. Not now that we're all at home, I don't know what we do. The RSA has gone a long way to address the gender balance, and since 2010, out of the 40 elected, 17 have been women. It's difficult to play catch up, but we're not alone in this. Another first for the RSA recently was electing Dr. Fiona Dean as the first female librarian, and electing Mona Siddiqui as HRSA and Speaker, a new role in the Academy, which is replacing the chaplain. And in our many awards and residency scheme, the statistics reveal that more men have been successful than men over many years. In 2010, I was the convener of the New Contemporaries, which is the second year of the newly designed exhibition, having been a student competition before. And that year, one of the people I selected was Rachel McLean from ECA, who has had a meteoric rise to stardom and of course is now elected in RSA, I think it was last year. So it was very good to see, you know, from that spell for people coming up and becoming part of us. It's brilliant. Right, where am I? Becoming president in 2018 was not one of my goals in life, but I was enormously flattered and honoured that my fellow academicians considered me worthy enough to take on the role, making history along with the other women elected to other Royal Academies. The Academy is no longer the simple organisation it was 35 years ago, with only 2 exhibitions a year. It's become a very complex and many-faceted operation with a large remit. Being president is therefore hugely challenging and takes up most of my time, sadly at the expense of my own work. However, for me, the most rewarding part of the job is the engagement we have with up-and-coming generations of artists and architects through the New Contemporaries and the awards and bursary schemes. Having been an educator all my life, students have always been enormously important in my life, and they kind of replaced children, which I think was a better deal. So I'm sure all of those with children will agree. It's frustrating that after a productive first year as president, starting to make some useful connections and build on other new initiatives, such as the re-established annual dinner, that COVID-19 and the recurring lockdowns have impacted on what we've been able to do. With the New Contemporaries postponed until 2022 and our second annual exhibition having to be again shown online, it would seem that I'm also likely to remain as an online president for the foreseeable future. Despite this, the RSA is positive and have continued to offer varied programme of exhibitions open to the public in lower galleries when possible, also online. And the live from the Academician Studio series has given everyone a terrific and privileged insight into artists' work. And for me too, I didn't know just what some of the, the people really did and how they thought about work. I've been absolutely fascinated by it. Not all of us are able to do it because we're kind of not that great at doing technology. We manage, but only just. All our many meetings are scheduled, continue on Zoom, and we've been working on exciting plans for the way ahead to the 2026 bicentenary. And out of the many proposals submitted by members, Assembly have just voted on those that should have priority for further development. So we're looking forward to all of that. But of course, the RSA would not be work without a terrific and responsible, knowledgeable and creative administrative team headed by Director Colin Greenslade. Presidents come and go, but so the team are the ones that keep the show on the road, and they work tirelessly to make all our plans and our schemes come to fruition. So I have to say, give them a big round of applause for keeping us going. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And now I think I have a question for Sandy. Are you ready, Sandy?
I think I might be ready, Joyce. Depends what you're going to throw at me here.
Sandy, we have many fascinating works in the collections by women artists. I wonder if there are any that you would like to highlight.
Yeah, that's always a sort of $1 million question, isn't it? When you're looking after a collection of about I think we've got about 8,000 individual artworks in the collection now. So whenever you get asked kind of what's your favorite, or what would you highlight, it's kind of like sort of trying to pick out from hundreds and hundreds that you find, you find something that you love every day, and it could be different from one day to the next. I don't know where to start, apart from your work, obviously, Joyce, which is clearly up the top. You know, I've different things at different times. Really, I suppose I studied sculpture at Gray's, so some of the sculpture in the collection does always come to mind. I do love Marion's diploma work, Dissection and Draft, that Alice showed in our talk, and a work by Anne Henderson in the collection called Women in Chair. She was a Caithness born artist who taught at ECA and actually taught Bill Scott. And I'm not sure if I can maybe share an image of the work on the screen. And you know, you can see the connections between the work of Bill Scott and where, you know, some of his ideas may have come from. And you show she's one of those artists that's overlooked, as many, not just women artists, but I think Scottish artists are, and they deserve more attention. Anything by Frances Walker, you know, I think her work and her ideas really resonate with that idea of wilderness, and I do love to get away out into nowhere where there's no other people about in Scotland, and Frances's work does speak to me about that. I think her diploma work, which is titled Foreshore at Fitty, might just be quite near to where your old house was, Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it's in the same area. I'll share it on the screen, and you might recognise it quite well. Yes. But you know, there's so many. There's one group or one artist and one kind of group of works that I did want to highlight for, you know, a particular reason in connection with the Friends of the RSA, and one of the recent female artists who's actually kind of brought her identity to light. And there are three sort of substantial and finely painted landscapes in our collection, which actually are the earliest painted works by a woman artist in the RSA collection, dating from the mid-19th century. And they're fairly large. The larger two are about 3 by 4 feet. And this was always an artist that was a bit of a mystery and quite, you know, I think it sort of caught my eye, I think, when I started working at the Academy fairly early on, because on the frame was just a plaque that stated her name was Mrs. Cumming. And looking at the documentation that was with those paintings, there was nothing further to give her her real name. And I always thought that the paintings that were, you know, they were so finely painted and such a good example of that kind of period. I was quite surprised that there was no, you know, she didn't have a name there. That no one had gone to the works hadn't come in with actually knowing who the artist was other than her married name. I guess it was just of the time. I'll share an image of it if I can on the screen as well, just so you can see what I'm talking about. I can find it. Let's see. Let me just open them up. Give me a minute. Let me turn us into life. So yeah, there's St Bernard's Well, Hawthorne Den, and a painting titled Dunkeld. And we just didn't know about her very much. We knew she was connected to Montrose, and we had a look there, but we just didn't have the time. These kind of things escape us. I'm sure Alice knows, you know, you have ideas of what you might want to research, and it's kind of, you sometimes don't have the time to look into it. But her identity came to light in a very interesting fashion with a collections residency artist, Victoria Burney, who came on to join us as a resident with the RSA Collections as part of the RSA Residencies for Scotland scheme back in 2019. And she was really interested, our project's called Provenance, and she was really interested in looking at the breadcrumbs around the collection, where those led, where those connections were. And she was interested in the work of D.O. Hill, his drawings, landscape drawings that we have, Horatio McCulloch, and also obviously Mrs. Cumming caught her eye. And it really led us on quite a fascinating journey to speaking to a genealogist that Victoria got in touch with, really kind of tracking down this woman's identity. And I don't want to give everything away because the Victoria's residency at the collections was part funded by the Friends or supported by the Friends. And so Victoria is going to be presenting on her project and what she discovered and the work that she's been creating later this year. But suffice to say that we were able to discover that the painter of this work and Hawthorne Den Dunkeld was Elizabeth Maria Auchterlonie, who was born in 1774 in Montrose, I think died in 1854 in Cheltenham, had been a student in the atelier of Alexander Nasmyth's daughters. And, at the time, Nasmyth would get those, he would make cameo appearances and get those students to copy his canvases. And I think that's why there's so many paintings of St. Bernard's Well out there, because so many students copied those paintings of Nasmyth. And so we were able to track this artist down, give her a name, give her a title. The work that's on the screen at the moment, it's away for conservation. And so
we can only see thumbnails.
Oh, can you? I see. I'll stop sharing and see if I can open it up so you can actually see the painting in a bit more splendor.
It was good to see all of them in thumbnails, but it's nice there. That's beautiful.
Can you see it now? Yeah. So there is actually a painting in the National Gallery's collection, Alice, which is pretty much an identical view to this in watercolour. And it came in through the 1910 transfer of works from the David Lang bequest that went from the Academy to the NGS. And I think it's listed in your records as family of Alexander Nasmyth. So it's quite possible that watercolour could be either the work that Mrs. Cumming, or Elizabeth Auchterlonie, as I should really call her, was copying from, or is a work by Elizabeth herself as a preparatory study for this painting. So it's it opens up a really, for me, it's a very interesting cycle of this generation, today's generation of women artists, into discovering and revitalizing the past and works in the collection that were, in a way, sort of forgotten because we didn't know enough about them. I won't share any of the images from Victoria's project because I think that you should wait until the artist's here herself to talk about that. But yeah, I think it's something to look forward to. I think I've got perhaps a bit of a selfish view in that an artist who's a resident in the collections, it's a focus on the collections, and so I'm always very excited by it. But I think, personally, I think her work's very beautiful. So you'll hopefully be interested to see that in the future. I'm going to have a look at some of the questions that come in from the audience, and we've got a couple. And Trisha Alliston is wanting to know a bit more about Fanny McKeon, who was an HRSA, and I think she was elected in 1854, if I'm right in remembering, and she would have been the second honorary female member. I don't know if you've had a look into her, if your research has touched on Fanny at all. Oh.
No, and I was just looking because you had kindly sent through some sort of further statistics, and yes, you've got her down in 1854 as the second woman elected honorary HRSA in the category of painter. But there may well be more if we dug further into the RSA archive. But sorry, Trisha, nothing to be able to tell you right off the top of our heads.
I do know that we don't have anything particular in the collections by her. We do have an interesting book in the library called Highlanders at Home by R.R. McKeon, and I'm fairly sure that her work features in that. But of the time, her name wasn't prominently on the book itself as her being involved. I do know that she was prominent in art education, but moved down to London. And so it would be that the best person probably to give a bit of a lowdown on it would be my predecessor and other HRSA, Joanna Soden. So I think I can certainly put you in touch with her, Tricia, and we can find out a bit more about Fanny McKeon, because I think she was quite a fascinating individual. One other question that's come in from Campbell Armour, thanks Campbell, and it's, were other art organisations like the RGI any more or less inclusive?
I think, Campbell, thank you. That might have to be for my next period of furlough leave. And I don't know what shape the archives of the RGI are in. They may not be in as such exemplary form as the RSA, but yes, the RGI is another institution rich in its history, and it would be lovely to get more of a sense of the history of women within that as well.
Joyce, I wonder, have you any kind of experience of the other institutions around the UK and in Ireland, and what the balance has been like there? You know, like the Royal Hibernian or the Royal West of England and the RE, even whether, you know, it's been a kind of similar pattern throughout history as the RSA.
I think it probably is. I think it definitely was in the Royal Academy. I don't really know enough about all the histories, but I think we were all in the same boat. It took quite a long time for women to get a foothold, so to speak.
Well, we did find out that the Royal West of England Academy in Bristol was the first to elect a female president, and that was in 1911. So that, you know, good for them.
That's, yeah. Because I think the other academies have been fairly similar to ourselves, and I think the Royal Hibernian was a few years before, and we kind of sneaked in just the year before the Royal Academy, leaving them to kind of follow up. Yeah.
That's right.
But we're ahead of the Royal Academy in electing a woman president. I mean, they were 250 years before they got one, and we're only 192, so we're quite progressive, really. I like to think.
Yeah, we you know, I think we've got, what's it, five years now until the 200th anniversary celebrations in 2026, which unfortunately, Joyce, I think even if you were to stay on for a second term as president, it would be past a point when you would still be there. So you never, we might have a second female president by that year.
You never know. I hope I'm alive to see it. But, you know,
hope.
After the end of my presidency, I'm having my doubts.
There's another question just popped in. I think it does relate to something. Was it on the chat? Let me have a look. Alice mentioned the nomination text provided for several of the early women. I wasn't sure if there was an implication that this had been a bit underwhelming compared to what was normal. Is there any evidence that particularly gendered language was or is used in describing the accomplishments of women nominees?
Only when people are referred to as Mrs. So-and-so. So Cecil Walton, for example, when she was nominated for associateship in the 1920s, she's described as Mrs. Eric Robertson. But in terms of the the achievements that are listed, it's virtually the same for everyone, because there weren't that many places or things that you could do or show. And I think I listed the descriptions for Anne Redpath's nominations because she was nominated so many times, and I think that they felt that each time they had to add in more and more explanation of what she'd done. Until you get that final one saying that she's just done everything. But actually, that might be an opportunity for me to mention that I'm going to be giving a talk for Museums and Galleries Edinburgh about the women artists nominated for election to the Royal Scottish Academy in the 1920s. And that's free and on the 13th of May, and information is on Eventbrite. And that talk was in fact inspired by this research for the RSA because of riches of the material in those nomination books, because they give you, I mean, I was focusing on the 1920s for this forthcoming talk, but they give you such an insight into the Scottish art world of that decade, who was being nominated by whom, why, who was successful, all those sort of networks and relationships. So do join me then if you can.
Absolutely, we look forward to that, Alice. They are a sort of treasure trove, I think. Just dipping into them and seeing all the relationships, they do kind of jump out the page, the names and the connections that are fairly hidden. You know, there's not been a huge amount done on those nomination books, so it'll be interesting to find out more about that.
And also the male allies who were supporting the women. So you may have noticed that Alec Riddle Sturrock's name comes up time and time again as someone who's proposing women artists for associateship. So and John Duncan's name comes up a lot. Ernest Stephen Lumsden comes up a lot. So there were obviously men who were absolutely in favour of women joining the Academy.
Joyce, do you remember who proposed you for membership? I don't know if did you mention that?
Yes, I did. It was William Littlejohn and Francis Walker, I presume. Because you know, is that all the 4 art schools at that time had huge links with the Academy, and I think every art school was trying to get their people in there. So and it was a time when everybody cleared out the art schools for a day to go to the assembly, because you know it's not like now where people on part-time contracts and whatnot, and the colleges seem to be more understanding about letting you go off and do that. So it was always a jolly day out. I can well remember the Northeast Express, as we called it, which is a train from Aberdeen going right down through to Dundee through Fife, picking up academicians on the way. And Ian Fleming would be holding fort in our carriage. And when I was a young member, you were the one that had to go up to the buffet to get him a coffee and a brandy, well, a few times. And then when Mackintosh Patrick joined the train at Dundee, the pair of them would have arguments about who was the most senior man. It was always, I mean, it was hugely entertaining, all the characters. I've always thought I should do a large painting called The Northeast Express and bring back all these characters to life. Maybe I will. It'll have to be very large.
Yes, please.
That sounds like a great project.
12 foot long, I think.
Fantastic. I think we're after 8 o'clock now. I'm pleased to report that my children are in bed and are not running around the house making a rammy anymore. I think I'll now hand over to Joyce. Thanks to you, Alice, for everything, and hope the audience have enjoyed it. But I'll hand over to Joyce now to give thanks and finish tonight's talk and discussion off.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, thank you, Alice. It's been a most illuminating insight into the history of the women in the Academy. And Sandy and I both recognise the significant amount of time that you have spent researching and double checking the facts and adding to the existing information, which is now recorded in the collections and archives and library for all the future generations to enjoy and to find out more. So it's been a magnificent contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think as a lasting thing, we must remember that the RSA was not alone in its dismissive attitude to women. This was prevalent amongst all academies and societies of the time. And it's interesting when I have to attend parades for the various Edinburgh with the learned societies at St Giles for, you know, things like the Assembly, etc., how few women are represented in these parades. But what you do know is that those women present are very special and will have worked extra hard, often against still prejudice, to have reached these very high positions. So I think it's interesting to see that. But it's been a real pleasure, Alice, for us to host this event, and thank you to everybody for attending and for all your support during these difficult times. And I think we should all show appreciation for Alice in an unseen round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.